Stop recording checkbox checked. To clear checkmark, press space bar.
Hello to all of my subscribers. This is Vol for Life 8657, and I first want to welcome all of those who have newly subscribed. I hope you enjoy the content that you find here, and do feel free to spread the word and and encourage others to subscribe as well. This is not a stream of a gaming video, but it is on the topic of games and software, particularly in the realm of accessibility and non-disclosure agreements. And let me just say that this has been something that I've been thinking about for a while, for several months actually, going all the way back to early February. And it's something that has been building and building and building, and it's finally reached a point where I need a place to voice this, and so I'm going to voice it in a very direct way. And this is what I've come up with. So we all know the power of a non-disclosure agreement, and those little documents, or sometimes big documents, basically say that anybody outside of our organization, company, secret group, however you want to slice it, doesn't need to know about anything that we do until such time as we choose to let people know. I think Percy Weasley said it best, and it's something that any Harry Potter fan or anybody who knows a Harry Potter fan will quote: "It's classified information until such time as the ministry chooses to release it." That is basically the summary of a non-disclosure agreement. But I see a big problem with non-disclosure agreements when it comes to matters of accessibility. And I'm going to get into that here right now. The biggest problem that I see is people with disabilities, whether they be visual or otherwise, don't have any idea until the last possible minute, or sometimes after the 11th hour, if their product is going to work for them. To flip this on its head, let's say that Microsoft or Apple suddenly decided that when we release a new software version or a new product to the masses, we're not going to discuss any usability or accessibility changes that we've made for our disabled customers. Even though we have them, we're not going to discuss those changes because we'd rather them not know about them until they buy the product. Well, that would cause a lot of problems. Everybody who has an iPhone and who is blind or even visually impaired clearly understands the value of VoiceOver. And if you have an Android device that's not a Samsung device, you would understand the power of TalkBack. And if you use a PC, there's JAWS and NVDA. Well, what if Microsoft or Google or Apple decided, well, until we release this software, nobody outside of our company can know what we're doing with it. That's our new policy. We're going to implement that into our non-disclosure agreement. What does that mean? It means that, in theory, JAWS would not work with the next version of Windows. NVDA would not work with the next version of Windows. Now, I'm speaking about this in theory, because clearly that's not what happens. And for the most part, when a new version of Windows comes out, our screen readers generally, the vendors of screen readers can keep up, and they generally have partnered up with the company in some way so that they can make that happen. But when it comes to gaming, what we generally get whenever we inquire about accessibility from game developers, and it doesn't matter which developer it is, let's just take Ubisoft for example. When I inquired about the accessibility features in more detail beyond what was written on their FAQ, the response that I got, in essence, was, purchase the game and find out. And this was after the title had long since been released. And what that tells me is is that to them, having someone purchase a title is more important than answering the person's question. But what if you're asking about a title that is not playable yet by the general public? You get answers like this: I don't know, or I can't say anything, or we can't discuss that. Well, here's my argument against that. AppleVis recently, according to their own website, got permission from Apple to discuss iOS features of inaccessibility or even a general importance a week before the software is released to the general public, when the Gold Master build is released. Well, the Gold Master build is not a public release. No, it's not. But the reason why they have permission is because the Gold Master release is the same exact release that the general public is going to get. So what happens in a gaming situation? There is no such release. There is no way to discuss those details because the developers won't say nothing. Well, we with disabilities are basically left to fend for ourselves. We don't have any way to communicate with the developer ahead of time, and I find that very frustrating and a little disconcerting. It would be no different, for example, let's take a really bad example, but I'm going to get to where I'm going to get here in just a minute when I finish. So let's plow ahead and make a generalization. There was a big national lawsuit that took place between a lady and McDonald's over the issue of her being quite severely burned with hot coffee. Now, I still think, my own personal opinion, that it was the absolute dumbest lawsuit in the world. If you order a cup of hot coffee from McDonald's and you have held it or touched it or have looked at it or feel the steam coming off the side of the plastic cup, that should tell you that it's hot. And yet she sued. And again, I understand that medically she was burned pretty badly. She sued, and not only did she win, but the results of that were that McDonald's, even though they are serving hot coffee, now has to put in very clear writing, in print. I guess someone who's blind could go to court and argue that they should put it in Braille. I mean, this woman got it put in print, but I digress. Put this in print that basically said, this coffee is hot. Be careful. That's very terrible paraphrasing, but that's in essence what it is that is being said on the container. Well, we don't even get that much information. Except buy it and find out. Or wait until it's released. So, my argument against that is that screen reader developers and even operating system developers offer public betas of their software. In Microsoft's case, they offer insider builds of Windows, and they clearly put disclaimers out there that say that these are going to have bugs. Don't use this for a public environment or for a production environment. You name it. There's this big long agreement that basically says that if you install this and something breaks, we're not responsible. But we want your feedback. We want your information. We want to know how it is and what it is that you use our stuff for. JAWS, Freedom Scientific offers a public beta of JAWS, which is actually supposed to be released next week, that basically offers the same thing. Even if you don't have a JAWS license, you can still try out the public beta in demo form. And that allows you to see what's changed, what's new, what works, what doesn't, and give feedback on that. But yet, again, in the gaming industry, we're not offered that. We're told, shut up and wait, basically. But what my thing is I don't want to have to spend $50 for a title that I'm interested in, only to find out after I've downloaded it, opened it, gotten through all the agreements and hoopla that it's not accessible, because then I have to go through not the developer's website, but I have to go through the platform, whether that be Xbox, Steam, or otherwise, who distributes said title in order to get a refund. I think that developers, especially when they are being forced to be compliant, at least they're all those who actually choose to be compliant, I should say. 2K Sports and NBA 20 has not done a dab blame thing for accessibility this year. But those who are choosing to be compliant should have to put at least a disclaimer in their description when the game is released, at the very least, that says this title is CVAA compliant or this title is not compliant. Instead, even the title, let's take Madden 20, even a title like Madden 20, which is more than CVAA compliant, there's nothing in the description that says that. So if you don't know about a title and you're downloading it for the first time, and I hear an argument that says, well, why don't you Google it? Most people don't. For the most part, most people who don't have a disability already know what they're getting. Because in the mainstream, there's all sorts of information on the games that you are either looking to buy, even though they've not been released, or have been released and have guides for and everything like that. But yet when it comes to accessibility, that information's not out there. Unless the developer chooses to put it out there. And I think they should be required to, at the very least, put in their description, when the game is set for release, and it is released, at the very least, they should put if it's compliant, to what degree it's compliant, or if it's accessible, to what degree it's accessible, what features are included, and how those features work. Well, we don't have a lot of space. You know what? I've seen descriptions of games that practically tell a game's story. And yet there's nothing that discusses accessibility.
Dropbox up to date baby bird Slav.
Oops, I do apologize for that. That is
Dropbox
Speak
up to date.
Dropbox from Valiant 8086. So that's my 2 cents on that. To give a little bit of a snarkiness conclusion, though, I will say this much: if the mindset of developers is going to be purchase the game and find out, isn't that the equivalent of saying I should drink this Kool-Aid without testing to see if it's going to kill me or not? I mean, or putting my head back, tipping a glass of very hot liquid down my throat without actually checking to see just how hot it is. Isn't that kind of silly? Leave comments and let me know what you think. And I hope to hear from you guys more often. We will have some daily blitzes this week regarding Madden 20 and Face of the Franchise.